Chapter 3. A Familiar Ache. "This is going to hurt," Sister Terry said as she shifted her hold on Mitsue's nose. "I'm used to it," Mitsue thought, and indeed he hardly made a sound as she pulled down, slotting the broken bone back into place. His eyes watered and his vision flickered, but he remained standing. Gauze followed, and then Sister Terry sent him on his way, cautioning him to take it easy. "I don't want you to end up back here in a day or two because you wouldn't let it heal. Keep your hands off of it." Mitsue mumbled his assent. "And get to bed. No dawdling." She closed the infirmary door behind him, and, after allowing his eyes to adjust to the dark hallway, Mitsue turned and walked towards the boys' dormitory. It's just like 9 years ago, he thought. Everything's coming apart. The hallways were deserted. His footsteps echoed off the stone walls. Turning a corner, he found himself once more on a ruined street, the fire of 9 years before twisting up among the houses, the night pulsing with the frenzied screams of those trapped and dying. Mitsue stumbled forward, his feet unable to find purchase, the smoke obscuring his vision, filling his lungs, his heart frenetic in his chest, scrambling at the banks of his ribs. He tripped over a pile of rubble and fell sprawling into a crater, scrabbling with his nails at the black dirt, coughing, choking. Above, the smoke made a canvas against which the firelight pressed its red and orange brushstrokes, imprinting there the strobing colors of a new and terrible violence. The wind shifted and the ash swirled down in sheets of gray, like an itinerant cloud of moths. Mitsue smothered his eyes, collapsing the memory with his palms. Forget it. It's in the past. There's nothing you can do. Why did he have to remember? Day or night, why did his thoughts always turn back that way, ending in a burning city? He resumed walking, stumbling at first, but gathering his strength. He couldn't afford to fall apart. Not now. Not when Ray needed him whole. That's right. However tough she might seem, he knew it was just an act. Beneath the anger, the vitriol, she was hurting. Her father's death had come as a shock, a second blow after her mother passed some years before. Mitsue was the only thing she had left now, and he needed to be strong for her. Instead of turning right to get to the boys' dormitory, Mitsue descended the steps in the entrance hall to the first floor, his shoes coughing against the stone. Then he walked left and through a door. Beyond was the abbey's cloister, in the center a small garden presently covered in a thickening layer of snow. He put his arms on the railing and watched the snow fall. He tried not to think. There was so much he was avoiding these days. The cold bit into his skin and his breath smoked. The flakes drifted out of a pure ebony sky, gaining substance only when they hit the aura of light from the gas lamps in the courtyard, like ghosts returning to the land of the living. He watched the crystals sparkle and turn on the wind. It won't stick. These storms were common in Layton, snows that pushed down out of an avalanche of cloud only to melt as soon as the moon rose in the morning. In 12 hours it would be as if the storm had never happened. Everything would be forgotten. He put his hand out to catch the falling flakes, each one destroying itself against the heat inside him, the water pooling in his hand. "He was your dad too," a small voice said. It's what he didn't want to think about, now the second time he'd lost a father. He tried to remember the first, a flash against the edge of his memory, a gruff voice spinning stories as night drew on, a silhouette. It had happened so long ago, 9 years. He had been only a child. What memories remained were only partial truths, Mitsue's mind filling in the muscle and the flesh and the bone, waking or dreaming, molding the man from the ash in the back of his head. The truth was he couldn't remember whether the smile he had fixed in his mind was real or not, what shade of brown his father's eyes were, how he looked when he was angry. His father was a faceless phantom, his mother just the same. He wondered how long it would be until he forgot Ray's father, Dr. Ashford, until he couldn't recall the hooked nose or the high brow or the beard, the way he spoke, until it all melted away like so many snowflakes in his palm. Mitsue's breath condensed and floated off up into the night. Dr. Ashford had picked him out of the rubble, taken him away, given him a home. What cause he had to do this, Mitsue never knew. There were some things that, try as you might, you could never ask someone. Perhaps it had merely been pity, the horror of finding a child amid all that ruin, broken and exhausted. Or maybe he'd hoped to atone for his own part in Sotsu's destruction. Mitsue never knew, never would know, and whatever the reason, he had no way to repay the kindness, and, he realized now with a sinking feeling in his chest, he never would. Some days it still didn't feel real. Mitsue would wake and lie with his eyes closed, dangling between sleep and reality, his dreams crumbling apart, and not know what had happened, not remember that Dr. Ashford was gone, that his parents were gone, that he was alone and weak and foolish, incapable of saving any of them. In the void he would simply float. Like a child, like less than a child, less than an awareness, swaddled in the dark. Inevitably he would open his eyes, and then the darkness would peel back in a clap of thunder, and the truth would tear across his mind like a flash of lightning, illuminating all those things he'd hoped to forget, and he would be returned to the present. He closed his fist and felt the wet against his skin, and wished they were all still alive. Then he wiped his hands on his sweater and turned and walked back into the building. He needed to get to the boys' dormitory before one of the sisters discovered him out of bed. He climbed the stairs and rounded a corner, and what was that?